So if you are building on an application, one thing that you're going to end up needing is analytics software so you can get a better understanding of how your users are using your application. Now, one analytics software I would recommend trying, which I use, is Umami, and it is free and MIT licensed, and it doesn't require you to have a cookie banner on your website. So they have a nice setup guide that you can follow, and we're going to be using Umami to track the analytics on this Survive the Night application. I can see my Survive the Night website. I can see when people view the application. If I were to go ahead and just refresh this page, you'll see that the views increased from 9 to 10, and I can see where people are coming to this application from. Are they using Windows? Are they using Mac OS? I can see their laptop. I can see their Chrome browser, if they're using Safari or whatever. And then also I can get a breakdown of country, which can help guide how you develop your application. Now I'm going to show you how to set all this up using Docker and Docker Compose on a VPS. Now we will be using Hostinger, which is, by the way, the sponsor of this video, for renting a VPS and installing Umami on it, and also hooking in Next.js into a Umami so we can get those live events as people view our application. So if that sounds good to you, let's just go ahead and dive into setting up a VPS, and then I'm going to show you how to set up Umami and hook it into Next.js. So we are going to first start with setting up a VPS. Now we're going to go to hostinger.com for our VPS, and right now they have a really great Black Friday sale going up all the way until December 15th, where you can get huge discounts up to 67% off VPSs if you were to get the 24-month plan. So if you want to get here, go to hosting and click on VPS hosting, and that'll get you to this page. And we're going to scroll down, and we're going to use the KVM2, which happens to have 2 cores and 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is actually quite a lot and enough for most applications that you're probably going to host. And a bunch of bandwidth as well. You're probably never going to get close to 8 terabytes bandwidth. And if you do, then that means you have a really successful application that people are using. So let's go to this most popular plan. Let's go ahead and click it. And I want to walk you through how you can get this set up. So if you do the 24-month plan, you're going to get a huge discount on your VPS. But luckily, I can give you an additional 10% off if you type in WebDevCody over here and apply that discount code, which now gives you about a 70% total off on this plan. So if you notice over here, it's about $5 a month for 2 years of VPS. And then, of course, you're going to enter in your billing address and your payment information to actually get access to this VPS. But let's just go ahead and fast forward past this. So now we can actually start setting up our VPS. Let's follow this setup guide. I'm going to go ahead and click Start Now. And then we are going to select United States of Boston because that's closest to my location. I'll click Next as well. So now we get to choose our operating system. Honestly, I would just pick Ubuntu, but I've also used Debian and CentOS for servers in production. So you can kind of pick what you want. I think Ubuntu is just kind of the easiest to get going with, and it's beginner friendly. So I'm going to click on this one. Now, one thing that's nice about Hostinger is that they give you a malware scanner that you can set up on your VPS, but I'm going to keep this disabled for now because we would just want the bare bones VPS to set up, and then I will click continue. So now let's generate a root password and copy that somewhere. And then I'd probably also recommend setting up an SSH key. SSH keys are typically a lot more secure than passing around root passwords, but if you just want to keep it simple, a root password can work as well. Let's click continue. And then this is like a review page where you can see your location, your operating system, and what your host name is going to be. Let's just go ahead and click Finish Setup, and that's going to spin up our VPS in just a little bit of time. And then we can SSH into it and start setting up whatever we want on the machine itself. Okay, so our VPS is now ready, and you can SSH directly into it using the root password now if you want to, but we're going to click on Manage VPS just so that we have some more information about how this stuff kind of works. So now that we're on the dashboard, basically, if you ever want to get information about how to SSH into the machine, just go to your overview and go to SSH access, and you'll see down here, this is what you run in your terminal. So let's go ahead and copy this command and see if we can get into the machine using that root password. So in a terminal, I'm using VS Code, but you can use whatever terminal you want. Go ahead and just paste in the SSH command and click enter. And then if it asks you if you want to continue, say yes. And then we will need to add in the root password. So take that password that you should have saved from the earlier step. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and paste in my password and click enter. And now we are actually in the server. And you can tell if you're on the server because it'll say root and it'll give you your host name down here at the bottom. Now, the first time you set up your machine, I would recommend doing an apt update just so that the machine has a list of the latest versions of packages on its cache. So now if you go to Umami, you can actually clone this entire project and get it running locally using Docker and Docker Compose. So we want to make sure that Docker and Docker Compose are set up on the machine itself. So let's double check. I'm going to say Docker version and see if Docker is found. You can also type in which Docker, and that should tell you if Docker is set up, which it's not. So we do not have Docker on this machine, which we will need to to easily set up Umami. So go to Docker Docs and find this link. I can put it in the description, but basically you want to find the Ubuntu guide and we're going to follow how to set this up. So step one is you want to set up the Docker app. Let's just copy this whole block and then we're going to paste it right here. So this command is basically adding the Docker repository to our machine so that when we do like an app install, it knows where to find Docker. Let's scroll down here and let's install the necessary Docker packages. So I'm going to copy this whole line and then we will just go ahead and paste this in. All right, so that's done installing all the necessary packages to get Docker running. And then finally we can run this command test to see if Docker's working. So go ahead and just paste that in. And it says it could not find the image, so it's actually going to pull that in from Docker Hub and put it on this machine, and then it's going to print out all this stuff, and this kind of verifies that Docker is working. And then we should also have access to Docker Compose, which we're going to use in just a second. So let's go back to the Umami GitHub repo, and we want to just go ahead and clone this entire repo to our VPS that we have set up. So click on this code button, click on HTTPS, and click on this copy to clipboard. I'm going to be running all this stuff as root. If you wanted to be more secure, you should probably create a separate user and give it sudo access, but I'm going to keep this simple. So in the root directory here, I'm going to say git clone, and then I'm going to paste in that GitHub URL there. And that's going to pull in all the Umami code to this machine. And we can kind of see that by doing an ls. Now let's cd into that directory. And then let's see what's in this directory with another ls. So awesome. So we have everything that we'll need to run this. Now I want to point out there's a Docker Compose file here. So if you have Vim, you can go ahead and look at that Docker Compose file. And this is going to pull in Umami. It's going to set up a Postgres database in your machine. But there's a couple of things that you should probably replace here, right? So replace me with a random string. You should probably change this to something else. So generate a long random string and probably put it in here. Also for your database, maybe you want to actually change these and not just make them the defaults. Just make sure if you do update them here, that up above, you also change where you're using them. So like in the database URL, if you're going to change the password and the username in the database, I would probably make sure you update these or this is not going to work. All right, so that's a quick overview of the Docker Compose. Now, all we need to do is just run it. So I'm going to say Docker Compose up. And then I'm going to say -d for daemon. So that's going to run Umami in the background and also our Postgres database in the background. It's all going to run on this machine and link it all together. And then eventually we can actually access this running Umami service by just going to our browser and typing in the IP address of the machine. Now, if you want to double check everything's good, just say Docker PS, and that'll list out the running containers. So you'll see here we have 2 containers here. One of them is the Postgres instance, and then one of them is Umami running at port 3000. All right, so let's check to see if we can connect. Let's go back to Hostinger and get our IP. Here it is. Type in the IP and just do 3000 for the port. And that should take us to our running Umami instance. Now, when you first set this up, your username is going to be admin, and then your password's Umami, and click login. Now, again, this is a publicly accessible URL. Anyone can log in with that default password. So I recommend going up to your profile, and then I would change your password. So click on this, change your password to something else. So new password would be something super secure. Okay, go ahead and save that. And now we have a protected Umami instance that now I only know the username and password for. So now at this point, we want to add a website. So currently I have a side project called survivethenightgame.com, and I want to link this to this running Umami instance. So let's figure out how to do this. Basically, I'm going to click on add website. And I'll say survive the night. You can put whatever name here. Now for the domain, I'm going to say survivethenightgame.com. And I'll go ahead and save that. And now you can click on view. And you can actually get real-time analytics for your application. But it's not going to be completely working yet because we need to set it up. So let's go back and I'm going to click edit. And you will see that you have a website ID here. So we want to copy this website ID and we want to somehow add it to the code base for this survivethenightgame.com so that when I deploy it, it's going to track when users load up different pages and report that back to our Umami instance. So now in the Next.js application, you can actually just import a script tag and have Umami already start tracking all of your page loads and whatever routes that people are navigating to. So I have this block right here that's going to import a script tag. And if you go to the tracking code section of your website that you created, you'll see that there's a source and a data website ID. Let's just go ahead and grab this for right now. But since I am using Next.js, what I plan to do is that this won't necessarily work unless you have a real domain set up in HTTPS. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say umami.js. Let me also just add a / there. Okay, so we have the data website ID, and then we also have the source, which is going to try to load this .js file. Now, if you go to next config MJS, inside of this next config, you can add 2 rewrite rules to basically allow so that when Next.js tries to load from umami.js, it's actually just going to load from our server. This is our VPS IP address and report, and then we're going to point to that script.js file. Secondly, when Umami starts loading, it's going to try to hit an API send endpoint, which we also need to rewrite rule here to point that to our Umami web server. Now again, this is just one approach. This is making it so all of our requests are still going to proxy through our Next.js application, and then behind the scenes, that's going to hit Umami for tracking events. But if you want to set up a custom domain, you can do that as well. You just have to go ahead and set up Caddy on your VPS instance, set up a domain, set up an A record to point to your VPS IP, and then you'd have to change these to be your actual like domain and IP address instead of going over HTTP. All right, so I went ahead and deployed those changes out. And if we were to go to the application that I'm trying to add tracking to, let's just go to some different pages here and just make sure that we have analytics set up. So I'm just going to refresh on a couple of different pages. Let's go to Umami websites here and let's click on Survive the Night, and notice that we are getting a bunch of views. So if you scroll down, you'll see that every time I hit one of those pages, we get an analytics tracking for that page. You also get information about, there's also information about what browser was used to hit the site, also like what operating system was used and what device, and then locations from around the globe from where your users are coming. So a great thing about Umami is that you can actually add in as many websites as you want. And because we have our own VPS, we have quite a lot of headroom to host as many things as we want. Right now, we're only using 447 megabytes of our 7.75 gigabytes of RAM. And our CPU utilization is almost close to 0 just from running a Postgres instance and Umami. So you can go ahead and host Next.js on this if you wanted to. You could host multiple different services on a VPS. And remember, if you were to sign up for Hostinger during the Black Friday deal and use my discount code that I provided, WebDevCody, you will get all of this for only like $5 or $6 a month if you sign up for the 24-month plan. All right, the last thing I want to show is security. Once you have your VPS set up, it's probably a good idea to add a firewall to your VPS. Hostinger has a way to do that directly in their dashboard. Let's just go ahead and say add firewall. I'm going to say only Umami, and I'll say create. And what we want to do is inside of this firewall rule, we're going to edit it. And we're going to say accept protocol TCP. I'll say port 3000, and I'll say, let's just go ahead and say allow traffic from everywhere. I'm going to go ahead and add that rule. And then also I want to allow from my machine directly. So if I were to say custom, and then I'm going to paste my IP in here and add that as well so that I can SSH into my box and no one else should be able to access it. All right, so now that we have the firewall set up, let's just go ahead and turn it on. And I will activate that firewall. And then I want to make sure I can still SSH into the machine. So let's just go ahead and rerun the SSH command. Okay, there you go. I'm still in the machine. And can I still access my Umami instance? If I refresh this, notice that it does work. And that'll just provide more security on your box. It's always good to make sure you only allow certain ports to be open that are running services. For example, we have a Postgres instance running on this VPS as well, which we probably don't want people to be able to access. So this is why you want to set up firewalls. You can also set up a firewall on the Ubuntu machine itself, which you can run some commands to do that. But I find it very easy just using the Hostinger firewall service to do that as well. All right, so that about wraps up my video. Again, go check out Hostinger. I really enjoy their service. I think the user experience for the dashboard is very, very nice. And also they have a really great sale going on for Black Friday. So go check that out if you want to get a really affordable VPS to host whatever services that you might want on them. I'll put the links for Umami and Hostinger in the description below. Other than that, have a good day and happy coding.